The strategic importance of the Strait of Hormuz. Airlines are canceling flights. Financial markets are reacting with panic. Governments are holding emergency meetings. News channels across the world are broadcasting non-stop coverage of a crisis unfolding thousands of miles away. What could cause such a global reaction? The answer might surprise you. A narrow strip of water. Not a massive ocean. Not a giant continent. Not even a large country. Just a narrow maritime passage known as the Strait of Hormuz. At first glance, it doesn't look particularly remarkable on a map, yet this small waterway plays an outsized role in the modern world. Every day, enormous oil tankers and liquefied natural gas carriers pass through its waters, transporting resources that power cities, industries, transportation networks, and entire economies. The Strait of Hormuz is often described as the most important maritime chokepoint on Earth. It is one of those rare locations where geography, economics, energy, politics, and military strategy all intersect. In many ways, it is one of the places where the modern world either keeps moving or risks slowing down. To understand why this narrow waterway matters so much, we need to explore its geography, its history, its economic significance, and the geopolitical tensions that surround it. And by the end of this journey, you'll understand why a place that most people will never visit has such a powerful influence on everyday life around the globe. The Strait of Hormuz sits between Iran to the north and Oman and the United Arab Emirates to the south. It forms the only maritime gateway connecting the Persian Gulf to the open waters of the Gulf of Oman, the Arabian Sea, and eventually the wider Indian Ocean. To visualize its importance, imagine a giant bottle. The Persian Gulf is the bottle itself. The Strait of Hormuz is the narrow neck through which everything must pass. Inside the Persian Gulf are some of the world's largest energy-producing nations. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Iran possess vast reserves of oil and natural gas. For these countries, access to international markets is critical, and for many of them, the Strait of Hormuz is the primary route through which their exports reach the world. Without it, moving those resources becomes far more difficult. What makes this even more remarkable is the strait's size. At its narrowest point, it is only about 33 kilometers, or 21 miles, wide. That may sound relatively large until you consider the immense volume of traffic moving through it. The shipping lanes used by commercial vessels are much narrower than the overall width of the strait. Gigantic tankers carrying millions of barrels of oil navigate through carefully managed corridors that are only a few kilometers wide. It's similar to forcing the traffic of an entire continent through a narrow bridge. Everything depends on that bridge remaining open. Everything depends on traffic continuing to flow. And that's exactly why the Strait of Hormuz is so important. Every day, an extraordinary amount of energy passes through this waterway. To understand the scale, think about your daily routine. The fuel in vehicles, the electricity supporting businesses, the airplanes crossing continents, the ships transporting goods, the factories manufacturing products. Many of these activities depend, directly or indirectly, on energy resources that may have traveled through the Strait of Hormuz. The modern global economy runs on energy, and energy flows through this maritime gateway in astonishing quantities. This isn't simply a regional issue affecting countries around the Persian Gulf. It is a global issue. When energy markets become unstable, the effects ripple outward across the world. A disruption in the Strait of Hormuz can influence transportation costs in Europe, manufacturing expenses in Asia, shipping rates in North America, and investment decisions everywhere. This is one reason financial markets pay such close attention to events in the region. Even rumors of instability can influence energy prices. The mere possibility of disruption can trigger market reactions. That's how important this waterway has become. But geography alone does not explain the strait's significance. History also plays a major role. For thousands of years, the waters surrounding the Persian Gulf served as important trade routes connecting civilizations. Merchants carried spices, textiles, precious metals, and other goods between Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Long before oil transformed the global economy, this region occupied an important position within international commerce. Ancient empires understood the value of controlling strategic routes. Trade generated wealth, and wealth generated power. Whoever controlled key routes often enjoyed economic and political advantages. The Strait of Hormuz was no exception. Over the centuries, different powers sought influence in the region. Among them were the Portuguese, who arrived during the early 16th century. At the time, European powers were searching for ways to dominate maritime trade. Control over strategic sea routes offered enormous advantages. The Portuguese recognized the importance of the Gulf region and established a presence designed to influence commercial activity. Later, other powers followed. The British Empire became deeply involved in Gulf affairs. Protecting maritime trade routes was a major priority. As global commerce expanded, the strategic importance of the region continued to grow. Then came a development that changed everything: oil. The discovery and exploitation of vast petroleum reserves transformed the Persian Gulf into one of the most strategically significant regions on Earth. Suddenly, the Strait of Hormuz was no longer merely a commercial route. It became a vital artery of the industrial world. The 20th century witnessed explosive growth in global energy demand. Automobiles became widespread. Air travel expanded. Industries multiplied. Modern economies became increasingly dependent on oil. As a result, protecting access to energy resources became a major concern for governments around the world. The Strait of Hormuz emerged as one of the most critical pieces of infrastructure in the global economy. Yet, unlike a pipeline, a highway, or a power plant, it wasn't built by human beings. It was created by geography. Nature had effectively placed a gate between the Persian Gulf and the open ocean, and whoever influenced that gate possessed strategic leverage. Military planners understand this concept very well. They often focus on what are known as choke points. A choke point is a narrow route through which traffic must pass. Throughout history, choke points have played decisive roles in trade, warfare, and politics. Examples include mountain passes, river crossings, canals, and narrow sea lanes. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important maritime choke points ever known. Its significance stems from concentration. When a large amount of traffic passes through a small area, that area becomes strategically valuable. Imagine an entire city's traffic relying on a single bridge. As long as the bridge remains open, everything functions normally. But if the bridge closes, problems emerge almost immediately. Congestion increases, delays multiply, economic activity suffers. The Strait of Hormuz functions in much the same way. A tremendous volume of global energy trade depends on a relatively small passage of water. This concentration creates efficiency, but it also creates vulnerability. And that vulnerability has repeatedly attracted attention from governments, militaries, and analysts. One of the clearest examples occurred during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s. This devastating conflict lasted for years and caused immense destruction. As both sides searched for ways to weaken each other, commercial shipping became increasingly vulnerable. Oil exports represented critical sources of revenue. Targeting shipping was seen as a way to damage economic capacity. This phase of the conflict became known as the Tanker War. Commercial vessels operating in and around the Persian Gulf faced growing risks. Ships were attacked, naval mines threatened major routes, insurance costs surged, global markets became concerned. The Tanker War demonstrated an important lesson. Even limited disruptions in the region could create international consequences. The world learned that stability in the Strait of Hormuz was not merely a local concern. It was a global concern. The events of the 1980s influenced how governments approached maritime security in the region. Many countries increased efforts to monitor shipping routes and protect commercial vessels. The goal was simple: keep trade moving, maintain freedom of navigation, prevent disruptions from escalating into broader crises. Today, military activity remains a prominent feature of the region. Numerous nations maintain naval capabilities designed to safeguard shipping and monitor developments. The Strait of Hormuz is among the most closely watched waterways on Earth. Surveillance systems monitor maritime traffic. Naval vessels patrol nearby waters. Intelligence agencies analyze developments constantly. Why such attention? Because the consequences of disruption could be enormous. Military planners frequently prepare for scenarios involving maritime chokepoints. They understand that economic security and national security are often closely connected. Energy security, in particular, occupies a central place in strategic thinking. Countries need reliable access to energy resources. Without it, economic growth can slow, industrial production can decline, transportation systems can face challenges. The Strait of Hormuz sits at the heart of these concerns. Its role extends far beyond the Middle East. Consider Asia. Over the past several decades, many Asian economies have experienced remarkable growth. Cities expanded, industries flourished, infrastructure projects transformed entire regions, living standards improved dramatically. But all of this growth required energy, massive amounts of energy. Countries such as China, India, Japan, and South Korea became major importers of oil and natural gas. Much of that energy originates in the Persian Gulf. As a result, the Strait of Hormuz became critically important to Asian economic development. For many Asian countries, uninterrupted access to Gulf energy supplies remains a strategic priority. A disruption could affect manufacturing, transportation, electricity generation, and economic performance. This illustrates how a narrow waterway can influence events thousands of kilometers away. The Strait of Hormuz connects producers and consumers across continents. It links resource-rich regions with energy-hungry economies. It serves as a bridge between supply and demand. And because of that role, it occupies a unique position in global affairs. The economic implications are enormous. Every tanker moving through the strait carries cargo worth millions of dollars. Collectively, the value of goods transported through these waters reaches staggering levels. Energy markets respond quickly to perceived risks. When traders believe supplies could be disrupted, prices often rise. Higher energy prices can affect virtually every sector of the economy. Transportation becomes more expensive. Manufacturing costs increase. Agricultural operations face higher expenses. Shipping companies adjust rates. Consumers may eventually encounter higher prices for goods and services. This chain reaction demonstrates why investors closely monitor developments in the region. Energy is woven into nearly every aspect of modern life, and the Strait of Hormuz is one of the key channels through which that energy flows. Naturally, governments have explored alternatives. Could other routes reduce dependence on the strait? To some extent, yes. Several countries have invested in pipelines designed to transport oil to ports located outside the Persian Gulf. These projects help diversify export options. They provide additional flexibility. But there is a limitation: capacity. The volume of energy moving through the Strait of Hormuz is so large that alternative routes cannot fully replace it. Think again about a major highway. Building side roads can help relieve congestion, but if the highway carries most of the traffic, the side roads cannot completely substitute for it. The same principle applies here. Alternative infrastructure reduces risk, but does not eliminate the strait's importance. As long as large volumes of energy continue to originate in the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz will remain a central component of global trade. This raises an important question. What would happen if the strait were suddenly closed? It's a scenario that has been studied extensively by governments, economists, military planners, and energy analysts. While predicting exact outcomes is impossible, several likely consequences can be identified. First, energy exports from the Persian Gulf would face major disruptions. Second, global oil prices could rise sharply. Third, shipping costs and insurance premiums might increase. Fourth, financial markets would likely react with considerable volatility. Governments could release strategic petroleum reserves to help stabilize supplies. Alternative export routes might be utilized wherever possible. Diplomatic and military efforts would almost certainly intensify. The situation would become a major international priority. Would the global economy collapse? Probably not. Modern economies possess significant resilience. Countries maintain emergency stockpiles. Energy markets have adapted to previous disruptions. Alternative suppliers exist, but the impact could still be substantial. The costs would likely be measured in billions of dollars, and the political consequences could be far-reaching. The possibility of such disruption explains why the strait remains a focus of international attention. Its importance lies not only in daily operations, but also in the risks associated with interruption. Ironically, one reason the strait remains stable most of the time is because everyone understands how important it is. Governments, companies, and international organizations all have strong incentives to maintain the flow of commerce. The stakes are simply too high. Looking ahead, some observers wonder whether the strait's significance will decline as the world transitions toward renewable energy. It's an important question. Solar power is expanding. Wind energy is growing. Electric vehicles are becoming more common. Technological innovation continues to reshape energy systems. These trends are real, and they are likely to continue. However, energy transitions take time. Historically, major shifts in energy consumption have unfolded over decades rather than years. Oil and natural gas remain deeply integrated into the global economy. Many industries continue to rely heavily on fossil fuels. Petrochemicals, aviation, shipping, manufacturing, and countless other sectors still depend on these resources. Even in a future with greater renewable energy adoption, the Persian Gulf is likely to remain an important supplier of energy for many years. The Strait of Hormuz will therefore continue to play a significant role. Its importance may gradually evolve, but it is unlikely to disappear. Beyond energy, the strait also serves broader commercial functions. International shipping connects markets, supports trade, and facilitates economic integration. Maritime transportation remains one of the foundations of globalization. The strait contributes to this interconnected system. It is not merely a regional waterway, it is part of a global network. And like any critical network component, its reliability matters. Ultimately, the story of the Strait of Hormuz is a story about geography and power. It demonstrates how physical landscapes can influence economic outcomes, political decisions, and international relations. A narrow stretch of water can shape the behavior of nations. A maritime chokepoint can affect markets around the world. A location most people never think about can have enormous influence over everyday life. The strait reminds us that geography still matters. In an age of satellites, digital communication, artificial intelligence, and advanced technology, physical locations continue to play decisive roles. Goods still move through ports, ships still follow sea lanes, energy still travels from producers to consumers, and certain places remain uniquely important. The Strait of Hormuz is one of those places, small in size, immense in significance, a narrow corridor connecting some of the world's richest energy reserves with the global marketplace, a strategic gateway watched by governments, militaries, investors, and businesses alike. A place where economics, energy, security, and geopolitics converge. Few locations illustrate the interconnected nature of our world more clearly. Every day, ships continue their journeys through these waters. Tankers loaded with energy supplies navigate carefully through designated channels. Trade flows onward. Markets function. Industries operate. Cities remain powered. And much of it depends, in one way or another, on the continued openness of this remarkable maritime passage. The next time you hear news about tensions in the Persian Gulf or developments involving the Strait of Hormuz, you'll understand why the world pays attention. Because this isn't just a regional story. It's a global story. A story about how one narrow waterway became one of the most important strategic locations on Earth. And a story that continues to shape the modern world every single day.